All right. We're back with another one-turn special. I am Jeremy Futrell.
With Matt McDougall.
Look at that. Keep it in spirit. We're going to try and keep this one sub an hour. And we're going to pick a topic. And we're just going to talk and see where it leads us. And we've decided that why not, for a very early episode, make people mad. And talk about our pet peeves in the Highland games. Because we think we're better than you. And you're going to hear about it.
We know we are.
Nat's got points set. No. At least Matt's better than you.
Me and Jeremy conglomerate and then divide it.
If you
better.
total us together, we're over 9,000 points, buddy.
Yeah.
So, Matt, do you want to lead off? Do you have a pet peeve you want to talk about?
Yeah. Shitty athletes really make me angry.
Well, just leave.
No. I think my pet peeve with the Highland Games is actually, again, probably comes down to perception. And my issue that I have is when the people that are doing it give people a bad perception of it, right? What I mean by that is, as athletes, it's important that we look like athletes, right? It's important. I know it's crazy, but it's important that we actually make the sport seem like it's cool, because that's the only way to actually get more people in it. And getting more people in it is the way we put more money in it. And putting more money in it makes it a better sport. It gives us more opportunity. It gives us more drive to compete at a higher level. And it's going to attract better athletes, which I know a lot of guys in the Highland Games are terrified by. But
I am.
As I've said before, I think it'd be way, way cooler to get a couple of freak throwers, that are...
a bunch of 60-foot open stones.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The guys that can power throw 60 feet in the shot to come over and compete, then it would be to keep it as a small circus effect. Yeah, exactly. Instead of LARPing. So my pet peeve, I guess, is that the people that are currently participating in it don't always represent it very well.
That's fair.
And masters athletes.
We'll get into that. All right, my pet peeve. I'm going to go a very different direction, and I'm going to get really specific. If you were throwing wob, why on God's green earth, or whatever deity you believe in, do you start it by throwing a 56-pound weight up to your fucking chin? That is wholeheartedly unnecessary. You have so much more momentum to fight when it gets behind you. For those of you that don't know, wob is thrown one-handed. Typically, you bring it back between your legs, and then you power and triple extension up, and you try to throw it over a bar. But the experiment they do in 3rd grade where they swing a bowling ball and they start it at your nose and it doesn't come back and hit you in the nose, that is a very sound principle of physics or something I don't fully understand. But the point being, if I am 6 feet tall and I am going to, for some reason, throw that thing 5 feet in the air in front of me and then try to catch it behind me, but I can only come 2 feet off the ground behind me, why did I just risk the injury and also pull myself off balance by starting so ungodly high in front of me? It is physically incapable of coming that high behind me. You have defeated the purpose, and you're going to look really silly, and I can guarantee you're the person that is almost every other game throwing out their shoulder and no hiding on 10 feet. Stop it.
It's the same people that do that take the weights for distance and decide to spin them around their head once before going into their really horrible 1 or 2 turn. And I don't know why you wouldn't practice the thing that makes you throw farther rather than practicing the thing that throws out your shoulder. So I guess that's another one for me.
Yes. Good throws look like good throws, and if the people that are doing it well and setting records and competing at a high level aren't doing it that way, I'm baffled as to why you are. I just think a lack of critical thinking is going to be a common theme, I think, because I love everyone and I want everyone to do this, but just take half a second, and if you watch everyone that's throwing 15 feet plus in a weight over bar, that weight doesn't come above their hip at the start of it. At most, their navel, depending on that person's leverages.
Yeah, I mean, for me...
I can't think of a high-level thrower that starts their weight throws the way that Matt just talked about. Yeah, navel, because you have a shorter arm. Yeah. So it's naturally going to be higher for you. I have monkey arms, and so when I come out, it's around my hip. And that's it.
And my better throws, they don't even get above my hip. I mean, it's through staying low in the back and high in front that I ever am able to develop any height on my throws, which, you know, it's not a disc. You don't have to set a great angle on them, but at the same time, you also just, you don't want to punch them out there either. So you still have to develop height in it. You have to give the implement time to actually travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Oh, man. What other pet peeves? There are definitely some that I've done that I look back.
Putting chalk on a fucking tacky implement is the most annoying thing.
Yeah.
Whether it is strongman, whether it's Highland games, whether it's, you know, tacky wrestling, I don't know. Like, I hate that. Like, grow up and put tacky on your hands. Oh, I don't like the feeling of it. Sucks, you know? Like, you want to be good?
Then let the hammer slip out early.
Right. Like do not chalk someone else's tacked implements.
Unless
please.
you're the guy tacking the shit out of my weights. Matt.
Wear a glove.
Yeah, and if you are gonna tack up during a weight throw, do it intelligently. Put a small amount of tacky on the back of your glove thumb or on the front of your glove finger. If that is the way that, if you have childlike hands and you can't hold on to things for some reason, then do it that way. It just makes infinitely more sense.
Yeah, it doesn't, especially on implements that we're hook gripping. Why are you ever tacking the front of your hand? It
There shouldn't
matter.
be tacky in your palm.
No, it should be on the back.
That's
of
not
your
what's
thumb.
doing the work.
Yep.
I don't understand that. But yeah, adding... God, we could do a whole thing about tacky on hammers. And why can't we all agree on what is the best way to apply tack to our hammers?
What else bothers you?
God, what doesn't? Man, this is so weird because I feel like in the moment I have a lot to say now that I've been put on the spot. Man, we should start making a list before we make these.
Probably.
That's why we're professional amateurs and not real professionals.
When people complain about surfaces or a certain stone, that actually bothers me a little bit.
Okay.
Because there's a difference between being a good thrower and having a high NASCA score, right? There are plenty of guys that are competing.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, there are plenty of guys that are competing that are awesome throwers, but like they go to games with 25 to 30 pound Braemar stones, right? Their hammers are shitty, their weights are short, and so you don't have the opportunity to throw on the best equipment, and that makes a huge difference. Like there are games that I specifically do because I know that their Braemar is, you know, an ounce over the minimum, and so I can always go and get,
or you can tuck it really well,
or I can tuck it really well,
know?
or it's a good stone, or right,
the heavy spots in the right area,
right?
Yeah,
like I don't really like Maz's Braemar stone. It's 25 pounds.
I love their open stone,
but their open stone is phenomenal. I can tuck it like a shot put. It has good flick to it. They call it the Black Pearl, but it's a wonderful one. It travels in a Pelican lockbox.
As it should.
As is right and just. But
it's almost as old as their WOB standard.
Right. And truthfully, I'm one of those people that does complain about equipment because I forget that I'm a guy throwing rocks in a field, drinking, wearing a skirt.
Yeah, and I think it's important to put that in perspective because there's a difference between complaining about things that you can be in control of versus out of control of. And I'd say that that's a pet peeve. So, like, if you have a complaint of someone should have done something better, that could be valid. If an AD is falling short, or an athlete, or whoever, there's a problem that could be fixed if someone gave a shit, I'm fine with you complaining about it to an extent. As long as you're not being an asshole. I can have a complaint and not be a jerk. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. But the people that will complain about things that is no one's fault, or is just the nature of the sport. You know, I don't like this caper. I like the caper over here. Oh, well, cool. I don't care. This is the caper that we're all throwing on today. Yep. And that levels the playing field. And if two of those guys are able to throw that caper better than you, then they're better caper throwers.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's why qualifying for bigger comps, I do think it's fair to say they've won a game, right? They've won this level of a game. I think there still should probably be, if not a minimum point entrance to enter into larger games like the East Coast Championships, or Dublin
Scots Fest.
Yeah, or the Dublin Irish Festival.
Yeah, that.
Like, winning a games is a big deal, and maybe we have minimums, or maybe we just have minimums in the competition itself, right? And we move it along that way. Because you could have flights that are 16 people, 8, larger flights, and still run through relatively quickly if we just had minimums. Or you can just not allow them to come. And either of those is fine to me, but...
Yeah.
Just leave that sound.
That's our intro, is us just
Moaning.
weird noises with the boyses. Alright. Pet peeves. What else do I hate?
When people come in and say they're going to revolutionize the sport. And
Ooh. Alright, let's talk about that because... or let's talk about the general thing that a lot of people... Because I fell into this. I came in as a B and thought I was going to come up much quicker than I did. And I'm sure I was annoying. I know I was annoying at a certain point. And I like to think that I've grown out of that. But some people don't. So I'd call that a pet peeve. Mm-hmm. Because I've been there, I'll extend some grace to be athletes that talk a mad game and then shit the bed. Because I'm certain I've done that. Yeah. Where is... Hey, you know what's a pet peeve? Hey, Hayden Ballio. Where is that Nazca replacement? I'm waiting. I want to see it. It's not as much of a pet peeve as it is me using a platform to ask why the hell we're still using a website that I'm certain is running off of a server that is supplied by floppy disks. I'm baffled. That is a pet peeve that is... I'm doing exactly what I just talked about. It's something I can't fix, and no one necessarily can, because I think the dragon has gotten too big for any of us to kill at this point. I don't know how you would go about fixing it, but it's one of those things to where if it was a perfect world, I think we would have a slightly different ranking setup. You know what? Here's a pet peeve. The throws in Nazca and the points assigned to them are not a direct correlation to the world record.
Oh, the numbers don't line up.
We went into a full on the spectrum breakdown, and they don't.
They don't match.
We have a group chat going where I got way more into numbers than I should have because I had a little bit of free time one day, and dividing the world record by a current throw is not a direct correlation to the points it should be. And if someone out there knows why that is, for the love of God, DM me and explain it, because it hurt my brain.
Yeah.
If I throw 10% off of a world record, that should be 900 points off.
Yeah.
It should be an 8,100 point throw.
Yeah.
Yes. I do not comprehend why the numbers are not shaking out the correct way, and it almost seems different levels of incorrect per event. And while I understand it is not affecting the overall ranking necessarily, because we're all being applied on the same uneven scale, I think it could end up being more beneficial. Let's say Sheaf was giving you more points than it should, but Stone was giving you less points than it should. I think that could start to play with some people's rankings, in this sport that no one cares about and isn't affecting any of our paychecks.
And doesn't even affect if you go pro or not, because it's by invite or declaration.
Yeah. I didn't say I was bankrupt. I declared it.
Right.
And I need someone to explain to me why that is. Even if we're going to keep using this database, that's totally fine. I know how to use it. I think it's hard to find. I think if you're a new thrower, good fucking luck finding it for the first time. I'd have been in this sport 6 months earlier if I'd have been able to find anything. But someone explain to me what the fuck is going on in that, because I am lost and my brain hurts.
I think one of my pet peeves is that we don't have exit interviews for games where people can, the ADs never ask, how was it, or people that are leaving the sport.
Most ADs don't.
That's true. Chad asks what we could do better every time.
Yeah.
But Chad Clark. Every episode.
Talk about it. This podcast is brought to you by our love for Chad Clark.
Yeah. Honestly. So that bothers me a little. And then flash on the pan athletes also bother me.
Okay.
People that come in and, rise very quickly either to top A or top B, or, top A or pro, and then they're just gone. Or they turn pro and they don't compete anymore.
Why does that bother you?
It bothers me because you start to get invested in people, and
I stopped doing that years ago.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, it bothers me from comp to comp, from year to year, to not get to see the people that you thought you were, doing the sport for. Because at the end of the day, what makes this sport so good and what makes strength sports so good is that you are, while it is an individual sport, we're not a team. It feels like that, right? We have all the benefits of being on a team sport with none of the drawbacks if one of my buddies wafts a throw, right? If I miss my sheaf...
It actually helps me.
It actually helps, yeah.
I love training with Matt, and I love it when he fails all of his heavyweight throws.
Yes, which is
it's
fairly
a win-win.
Often. Yeah. So it bothers me to invest time in people and invest resources and try to help people when they just disappear, especially with no explanation. Because the sport isn't for everyone. No sport is. Nothing is. But not getting the closure of why is frustrating at times.
Okay. It's a fair point. All right, let's see. This is going to be a shorter one than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
We need to do one of these with alcohol one night instead of sober.
I don't have that many qualms with the games.
Right. And I think that's worth pointing out. Matt and I are both sitting here struggling to think of pet peeves when in reality neither of us have a ton. We're going to keep doing this. We enjoy doing it. None of these problems are so bad that they're going to drive any of us away from this.
And these are all reach pet peeves anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Except for the WAP thing. That does piss me off.
Yeah, why are you... I tell you what, let's break it down throw by throw and talk about pet peeves that we see, I would say more often than not, new throwers doing. I think it gets more frustrating when they're not new. But technical things that in no way make sense. And why are you... stones. Let's go traditional order. Mm-hmm. What is something you tend to... I see a lot of people jumping for some reason. And when you're new, I understand that.
The Braemar...
I got one.
Yeah.
Oh.
So my biggest pet peeve here with the Braemar isn't something anyone does. It is how we decide what is forward motion. You're not allowed to have forward motion in the Braemar. If I lift my foot up and put it back down in the same spot, some people will call that a foul and some people won't, right? If my toe is against the toe board and my heel drives forward, some people will call that a foul and some people won't. And so a lack of consistency in what seems like a fairly clear rule is a little frustrating for me.
Trust your judges, I think, is a good tangent to go off of that, because when they're like, oh, who's determining forward motion? It's the judge. If you have a good judge and he's applying that rule evenly throughout everyone at your game, get bent on your hang-up. I'm sorry. But if you do have someone that's doing it inconsistently, that is frustrating. Or even within an organization. We have the same problem that every strength sport does of their 17 governing bodies across the country, and none of us can keep track of anything. But go up and talk to your ADs and figure out what they want or what the judges want. But man, it'd be really nice if it was unified. That's very fair.
Another pet peeve for Braemar is people make it static. And I understand they're doing that because they're trying to emulate a good technical position from track and field, and they're trying to get into the right place. Mm-hmm. But they'll crank back, and then they'll sit there for a second, and then they'll go into it. And so they completely kill their stretch reflex. And I can tell you, I can throw about 5 feet farther if I reach back dynamically and then just punch through. So, I mean, that is watching new throwers make an athletic movement less athletic is frustrating.
It is, but I think that one's just a byproduct of being new.
Yeah.
I think where your problem gets, and it's a problem that a lot of sports have, you'll have certain dinosaurs who go, well, you got to come back here and pause. And someone told them to that 20 years ago, and for some reason they have hung on to it and taught every new athlete that, and it drives me nuts. Yeah, listen to whoever's throwing it further. Here's my pet peeve, and this is on Braemar, or you'll see some people do it at the beginning of a glide, and it drives me nuts. And I think it's a drill somewhere, but I can tell you I don't see a lot of high-level people doing it, is they drop their whole fucking knee to the ground. Why? If you have brought your hip crease at or below parallel in your knee, this is no longer an explosive driving movement. You're squatting a rock for some reason, and if you think any squatting movement is as quick as a sprinting movement, you're wrong. Like, it doesn't apply that way, and we've all seen him do it. It'll be a guy who sits there, and I'm going to stand up at this table right now, even though this is not a visual medium, and they will wind back 3 times while they're zig-heiling with their left arm, and then every time they're coming back down to their knee touches the ground, and then they're coming all the way up, and then their knee touches the ground, and then all the way, and then eventually they throw, and it's a 19-foot Braemar. Mm-hmm. Stop it. No one is doing it that way. And if this, again, asterisk here, big asterisk. If this is your first game and you're uncomfortable in the movement, or if your first couple of games and you're just trying to get a feel for it and you're looking at games as basically a practice with a crowd, do whatever you want. I'm really not trying to shame anyone out of trying new things. And if that's how you just get a feel for something you don't get to practice at home, do whatever makes you happy. But if I've seen you at half a dozen games and you're still doing that, I want to smack you.
Yeah.
I'll hug you, but I'll smack you.
What about open stone?
Open stone pet peeves. Okay, this one is not as much of a pet peeve about the event itself. People not breaking it down correctly. Someone will have one come out funny, and every time they go, well, it was in the wrong place on my hand. And I'm like, no, your elbow touched your hip. This was not about where your hand was. Everything else is... Just because it came out funny, that does not mean it was in your hand funny.
My biggest pet peeve of the open stone is the modified South African throw, okay, the MSA. I don't understand why people choose to spend the energy doing it if they're not going to do the thing that actually adds distance to their throws. If you're throwing 36 foot in a power throw and 36.3 in an MSA...
With a stone that's 4 pounds lighter.
Right, exactly. Like, or just with the open stone, if you can power throw it and you're only adding 6 inches by rotating, stop rotating. Like, it's not worth the expended energy and the detriment to the other events for the 6 inches. Unless it is for you, but, like, it never has been that I've ever seen.
Not unless you have a world-class Braemar.
Right.
And
right. That being said, I think that people need to spend more time power throwing. I don't think it's enough to just say, I'm going to take, 3 Braemar throws and then move on. I spent a year and a half power throwing until I felt like my spin was back to where it needed to be. My rotation was back to where it needed to be to actually throw further.
The juice has to be worth the squeeze.
It has to be worth it, right? I'm spending a lot of mental energy trying to rotate, whether it's the modified South African or full track and field style rotation, or even gliding, right? You're spending a lot more energy to do something that's not appreciably better until it is. So maybe spend more time getting better. And if you're going to throw in the games, like, 1-turns are fine. Power throws are fine. There's no shame in doing either of those.
No.
In fact, I'd encourage people to take more 1-wind hammer throws, 1-turn weight throws, and power throws in the stone implements.
Yeah. I completely agree. Don't overextend yourself. That's not as much of a pet peeve as much as it is advice in general. Don't, just because you see people doing 3 winds on hammers doesn't mean you have to. Just because you see people doing 2 turns on the weights doesn't mean you have to. There are pros that are doing 1 turn in all of their weights. There's no right or wrong answer. Do whatever. Practice however you want, and if you want to practice a 2-turn, great. But if when comp day comes, you're getting more out of your 1 turn, just do that. Don't add more risk of injury or technical breakdown or ingraining bad patterns just because you see other people doing a 2-turn or what have you. Do whatever is working best for you. All right. Got any pet peeves for hammer?
I thought you said traditional order. Weights.
Stones, weights. Oh, yeah, weights.
Weights.
Let's go weights. I naturally like to skip weights.
Yeah.
Because they suck.
Heavyweight.
All right. Heavyweight for distance pet peeves. I don't know that I have a ton of them. Other than, it's not a pet peeve. I wouldn't say. I see a lot of people suitcase throw. And if it is your first game and you weren't able to practice heavyweight at all, I understand it. You wanted to get a mark on the... I'd equate that to, I wanted to mark just like I'm going to power throw my first open stone. If you're still relatively new and unfamiliar, and so you underhand a heavyweight throw so that you make sure you get a mark and you're still incredibly new, I can swallow that. Outside of that, if you've been doing this sport for a year and you're still suitcase throwing your heavyweight for some reason, I'm confused. Tell me why you're doing it. I'd love to hear. I think your energy would have been better spent after your first game or two learning how to actually throw it.
See, I disagree.
Ooh.
I don't think we should ever have an athlete.
Well, that's the end of this
suitcase
podcast.
throw, right?
Yeah.
The end. I don't like that we teach people to ever suitcase throw. when we're already teaching people how to turn their hip in for a shot throw or a Braemar throw or an open stone throw,
That's fair.
or the lightweight or heavyweight or anything we do. Like, it's the same position. Why aren't we having them, even if it goes, it's not going to go far anyway with a heavyweight, suitcasing or fronting it, power positioning it, however you want to say it. But why not, like, if I teach someone how to suitcase throw and then I say, oh, but you need to get the weight away from you, it's like, well, you just told me to keep it by my hip and swing it.
I would agree with you. For the vast majority of people you and I know, yes. Why are we teaching them to suitcase throw? Because you and I know people who have some sort of athleticism.
People that just show up at the games, whatever, you got to get them marked.
And that's where yes. So if you know someone, we have a friend who we're going to keep a secret right now because we're going to have them demolish a lot of people when they show up. But take that person. We're not going to teach that person how to suitcase throw.
We have 3 or 4 friends.
Yes. Okay. I have one friend. I have less friends than Matt has. We are going to teach those people never how to suitcase throw because you are fully capable of one day two-turning everything. So I'm not going to waste brain space and ingrain poor motor patterns. But I think we have another group that we practice with who tends to have a lot of people who just show up because it looks fun, who don't have an athletic background and who are not naturally inclined to doing it. And I think if those people are going to suitcase throw, I think that's fine because through no detriment of their own, we need people in the sport. You're never going to be a top level A. So if this is something you do because it's fun and it gets you active and it gets you involved with people that you like being involved with, suitcase throw.
Yeah, that's a fair point. If you are just doing the games because you just got into it, you just want something to do on weekends, you like Scottish culture, you don't like Scottish culture, or whatever the reasons are.
Maybe you just hate the French.
You just, exactly. And you want to come in and heavyweight for distance, you're going to say, I don't care about this, it sucks, it always sucks, I'm not going to practice it. That's fine, honestly. If you want to be a good A thrower or a pro thrower ever, heavyweight for distance has to be your focus. It cannot lag. You got to be throwing in the 40s. There's no exceptions. Like, you have to actually drill the fuck out of this event.
Yes. Yeah, it is. We can't stress this enough that Matt and I are going to talk from the perspective of 2 open class A male throwers. Don't apply what we're going to say to everyone. We will try to add caveats where we can, but we're leaving it up to you guys to read the context of what we're saying. I completely understand if you have a 15-year-old who you're just trying to get out of the house on the weekends. I do whatever works for them. I hope they have fun.
Yep.
All right, so heavyweight, lightweight. Similar issues. If you're suitcase throwing a lightweight, I need you to, the barn gym has reasonable membership rates, and I need you to show up and get stronger.
Yeah. I think for me, the issue I have with people throwing lightweight is that it is light enough that you can actually cast it way high above your head. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen a throw, with the exception of Ryan Vieira, who is just a stud, I've never seen a throw where the weight actually goes more than 6 inches above the head, is at head level when you're facing down, that goes anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't... There are some freaks out there that can do it, but they're doing what they do because they're freaks, not because it is repeatable, reliable form, right? You have to consider some things with a little bit of survivor bias. They were going to throw that far no matter how they're throwing, right? But if you're learning how to throw, and you're throwing this thing 2 feet above your head, your arm's straight up over you, and then you have to catch that and redirect it, good luck.
Yeah, it's not going to have long-term applicability. You might, because you were a new thrower, throw it 2 feet further that time, but congrats, you're going to be stuck there forever because you're doing it quote-unquote incorrectly. So... All right, lightweight.
That's really it for lightweight.
Yeah.
I mean...
Hammers?
I have no room to talk about hammer.
Yeah, Matt sucks at hammer.
I mean...
I don't necessarily have a huge pet peeve. The only issue I would ever have with hammer is an issue that I would have across the board in that if you were to watch a tape of a new thrower doing hammer, I can tell you, without ever seeing it, I could tell you what they're doing incorrectly. Their orbit is almost always vertical and in front of them. Their low point is not in the correct spot, and they look like an unfolding lawn chair. But that's not a pet peeve. That's because it's a weird fucking event. And my only peeve would be that if you don't work on that. That's all. If you can honestly sit down and watch a video of your hammer throw and go, looks good to me, and walk out, that would be my only pet peeve with hammer. is if you're okay with that continually being how you throw hammer, when we all know that if you extended your arms and leaned back and got your hips involved, you would shoot up.
Now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
guys that, because I'm thinking about Saturday and the hammer throwers I was watching, people that are new throwers, or just inexperienced hammer throwers in general, that's not really an event that you can practice in your backyard very well. Mm-hmm. So people try to emulate what they see in comps, which is a good thing, except with the hammers. Because if you don't have a good one turn, if you don't have a good grip and rip, there's no reason to do 5 rotations over your head.
Oh, you know what? That is a pet peeve. I have been at games where I literally watched someone take 8 winds on a hammer.
And then reset because they lose balance. And then
They didn't reset.
Again.
They
Right.
then threw an absolutely abysmal heavy hammer.
Right.
Stop and reset. If you get through your first 2 rotations and go, that didn't feel good, catch it, don't foul, and ask for a redo. It's totally fine.
If you're a new thrower, anything more than 2 rotations won't feel good.
No.
So don't.
Yeah.
My biggest pet peeve with hammers is you need to go and throw with people that know what the throwing hammer should look like.
Yes. And I will say a lot of people have pet peeves with blades, and they kind of have this dogma of you shouldn't put blades on your feet until you throw such a... Put blades on your feet whenever you want. I don't care. I don't think you're going to develop any technical difficulty from wearing blades too soon. I just think you're not going to get anything out of them. But I don't think it's going to... It's not the equivalent of a suitcase throw. You are not now ingraining some sort of poor habit. Your feet aren't going to move either way. Whether you put a piece of metal in the ground or not, I would say is not what's going to hold you back from progressing as a hammer thrower. I don't think you have to learn with slippery feet to become better at not. Do it whenever you want. If you're excited and you went out and bought blades after your first game, bolt that shit to your shoes and let's roll. I'm here for it. You're not hurting my feelings. I don't think you're doing any harm to anyone.
If you are going to put blades on your feet, make sure they're not steel-toe boots. It's just hard to get through. I learned that the hard way. Also, your toes will bleed.
Yes, your pinky toe is going to dig into that steel all the time.
Feels great. Caber?
All right. Caber. Again, this is one of those things where all of my issues are not necessarily peeves. I think it's just people need to learn it. It's again, much like Matt said with hammer, it's a hard thing to go into your backyard and practice for the majority of people. I think just, if I had to narrow it down to a peeve, I would say self-awareness. Because it tends to be one of those events that some new throwers will show up and talk a big game, and then you quickly realize they can't pick it, much less throw it. So, I don't have a peeve as much as I just want people to be self-aware. You know? If I had to have a peeve, listen to your judge when they say bail. For the love of God, stop fighting it and bail. It's for the sake of your collarbone and that baby in the front row. Just drop the caber. It's totally fine. If you're the guy that we're yelling bail at for all 3 of your throws, you weren't going to win anyway. Calm down. Take a breath. Let's move on.
I think my biggest pet peeve, and this goes for all throws, this goes for everything, is when people fail a lift. I see this more on caber than any of them, though. When people fail and they slip or they don't get a good pull and they freak out, they yell, they scream, they throw a tantrum about it. It's a tree, guys. Like, we're throwing a fucking tree. It's hard. If you can't do it, that's not a reflection of
Congrats.
you.
Neither can anyone else.
Exactly. Like, don't make more of an asshole of yourself. Like, you already failed. Don't draw attention to it.
It's all good. Move on.
Yeah.
Practice. All right.
Exactly.
We tackled Wob out of the gate.
Yep.
So, pet peeves on sheaf. Again, I just think there are people out there doing imperfect technique and getting by and thinking that is the end-all be-all. You know what? Hey, spinning sheaf. Why are we doing it?
If you're an A thrower, own a pitchfork. Like, if you want to be consistent at sheaf, own a pitchfork. I cannot throw with Jeremy's fork. Most people can't throw with my fork. I have straight tines. And don't just learn how to throw with whatever pitchfork you find at a market. Talk to someone that knows what they're doing for sheaf, and if you have to bend your tines. Yeah. Make it.
You should have, if you're an A thrower, thrown on several people's forks and figured out what works best for you. How long do you like for it to be because of where you like to place your hands? How much do you operate well with really bent tines? Do you operate well with straight tines? You should have figured this out, and as soon as you do, go buy a fork.
Yeah.
$115 is not a world-ending investment for most people. And work on it. Go get one.
I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, but most power lines, the top line is at 30 feet, and the lower one is...
For legal reasons, we can't stress enough that he's not telling you.
I'm not telling anyone to do this, and I'm not saying that I've done this, but complaining that you don't have a height set up doesn't matter. Like...
No. Honestly, record your stuff near any fixed object.
Yeah.
Or just go on... work on where you're peaking. Lay something on the ground. Lay a stick on the ground and try to have your bag come down the same distance away from the back of that stick that you are standing to the front of the stick. You can have a productive sheath practice regardless of whether you have a height standard or not.
I just remembered my biggest pet peeve in the Highland Games.
Okay. Shoot.
When people say that strength doesn't matter.
Yeah. Oh, this is an overarching one, I think, for both of us. Now, does a 900-pound deadlift matter?
No.
No.
No, there's a point of diminishing returns on everything.
Speaking of a human that has a pet peeve with a lot of folks in this game, but he did say this correctly. Matt Vincent once compared it to a triangle. And at one point of that triangle you have strength, another one you have speed, and another one you have technique. And your whole job is to try and push as far into the edges of that triangle as you can. If you over-prioritize one, the other two are going to suffer. And that's just the nature of the beast, and that's what off-season is for, and that's what preseason is for, and peaking. But strength is one side of that triangle. And if you don't think so, you're probably wrong.
Yeah, you cannot technique a 600-pound bench. You cannot technique a 40-foot heavyweight for distance. It's not going to happen. You might be able to technique into the
25-foot heavyweight.
Yeah, a 25-foot heavyweight, a pretty good sheath throw, but you're not going to technique a 17-foot wob. No. You have to get stronger.
I would say 6,000 points in Nazca isn't going to happen unless you're at least somewhat strong.
Yes, absolutely. You don't have to be, local strongman strong, and you don't have to be track athlete fast, and you don't have to be, very attractive.
That's the beauty of this sport, is you can be a good gamer. If you can just game it and stay in the top 3 of most events throughout the day, you're going to have a perfectly fine time, and you may even win a game or two. But you have to be kind of strong. You should be stronger than the people in the crowd watching you.
I think a good metric, this isn't a pet peeve, this is a piece of advice. If you have thrown for a while and you go into Nazca and you see that, 8 of my throws are 500 points and one of them is 3, that's the event you got to train, right? If you only have once a week to go out, pick that one. That's going to be the one that makes the most difference.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed. Yeah, people saying that strength doesn't matter is a great pet peeve. Oh, me.
They also don't throw very far.
They don't. They throw less than both of us. Yeah. White guys with podcasts. No. I'm going to talk about peeves of the game as a whole. Address it from a totality. Peeves of training.
Pet peeves in the weight room is a whole other...
Yeah. It's another hour of our lives.
Yeah. Oh, God. Wait. As a gym owner, I can bitch and moan
about people in a gym.
Right.
Never mind. Things that we hear other people... The dogma thing in general ends up being bad. You will find if you do this sport long enough, there is a group of people who have done it for a long time who are going to complain about your throws despite the fact that they're 10 feet further than theirs. But you do have the flip side. You have your Greg Martzes of the world who have done this for a million years and out-threw you and are just plain helpful. But there are two very different groups of people, and you will have old dogs that hate new people coming into the sport for some reason, or hate that they're doing it better than them, or differently, and it's not helping anyone.
The worst advice I ever got in the Highland Games came from a guy that's helped so many athletes do better, as runs clubs, does well, is an A thrower, and the piece of advice he gave me was don't throw like Spencer Tyler. And that
We've had a
pissed me
very
off.
long conversation
Yeah,
about this.
This made me so angry because when you're picking a technical model, you should pick someone that's similar height, weight, limb proportion, similar backgrounds, something that you can emulate. And even then, you can't throw exactly like them. You're going to have different grooving of your hips, your shoulders, all that. But to look at someone and say, don't throw like literally the best athlete we've ever had in the sport is kind of bullshit. Maybe we should all try to throw like him. If the guy, I got into this argument a lot in track and field. There were guys that were throwing discs that just looked wonky. And it's like, oh, well, they have weird form. It's like, well, they're throwing 72 meters. So like, maybe we should emulate them. Like,
yeah.
They could be an edge case.
Maybe that's actually what a good disc thrower looks like.
Maybe this is actually what it should be like. Oh, Spencer Tyler has his feet farther apart. Yes. Well, he does have to get an extra half turn out of it. No, he doesn't. He does it because he has fast hips, and he figured out that he has more time to apply force onto it because he has fast hips and a slow upper body if he does it that way, right? So,
and that's something worth breaking down. Don't throw like so-and-so doesn't apply if you break it down to the technical aspect. You may not physically emulate them, but what are they accomplishing by throwing that way? And how can you then apply that to how you throw?
Right. Yeah, Scott Farr is an incredible thrower. I can't give him enough credit. I watch his throws all the time. I'm never going to throw a hammer like Scott Farr.
Because he's 200 pounds lighter than you.
He's 200 pounds lighter than me, and I think his arms are longer. Like, the positions he's able to hit over his head, I think my lats would tear off, right? And so, it's not... He's a great technical model for people that are similar to him, or at least within 10% of size, right? 20, 30, 40% of size.
And you know what I think is a great event to draw this point is sheaf. Because there are two commonly accepted ways to throw sheaf that are both difficult, or different, but accomplish the same goal, right? So anyone that's done this long enough knows that there are guys that drive on their offside and then pull up, and there are grip and rip throwers. And you have two different people sitting at this table right now who throw sheaf differently, but both throw sheaf pretty okay.
Yep.
And it's finding what works for you, because ultimately you're going to establish a low point and apply force in an upward fashion. And depending on how you were built as a human and how your brain is wired and how you're able to apply that force is individual. So why not find someone who moves the way you do and emulate that?
Yeah, absolutely. And
anyone who thinks Spencer Tyler was the first person to move their feet like that is wrong. Because we had this discussion with someone the other day, and I even went back to the 2017 or 2018 Utah games that are on YouTube for HG Live, which, by the way, why does that not exist anymore, Mike? My issue becomes, if you watch, they may set up perpendicular, but the second they get wrapped in their throw, half of the pro class, their left foot comes forward.
Yeah.
At 50% of the time, it works every time. And just because Spencer didn't let his foot drift like that and just set it up there from the beginning, who gives a shit? They're all doing something similar. Just because you can pause it at the quote-unquote beginning of their throw and it looks different, go forward 2 whole seconds and you will see a lot of similarities. Spencer's just found a way to move it faster and be stronger.
Yeah, he's always the example because he, has the world record in, half the events. So
more than,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both weights, sheaf wob.
He's tied the record for caber. No.
Yeah, exactly.
I've tied the world record for caber.
Right.
That's silly.
I think he's actually gone 12 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got a 12-12.
Right.
Yes, that is a big pet peeve. Why not? That is something you should also, if you want to be better at this sport, this is getting off of pet peeves and devolving into training, which I promise we'll do a whole separate episode on. Find someone who you can emulate that you think you can move like. For me, it was Damian Fisher and Jonathan Harding. Mm-hmm. They're two guys who are relatively not huge, quote unquote, because despite being the biggest guy at any pharmacy I walk into, I'm not actually large for this sport. So if I find a bunch of guys who are over 6 feet tall but sub 300 pounds and have a proportionately longer wingspan, those are the people that are going to throw more like how I should be throwing, as opposed to watching Spencer throw or Matt throw or any of these guys, because we're built different. As much as that saying is stupid, you are. And not recognizing the difference in your bone structure and your muscle structure is stupid, and you're doing yourself a disservice.
Staying in the same class is a very frustrating thing for me. That there's nothing wrong with being a C athlete or a B athlete or an A athlete or a pro
I think there's
athlete.
nothing wrong with being a B athlete.
Right.
I think the purpose of a C in a novice class is to progress you. I think if you, outside of you only throw one game every other year, there's no reason to continue being a C athlete.
I don't want to harp on this too much because I'll come off as an asshole. But, you know, you run with the lame, you get a limp, right? You have to actually start throwing with throwers that are good.
Yeah.
That has to be your goal. You have to be experiencing what it's like to be around people that are actually better than you, because otherwise you're going to stagnate.
And you make it to the B class, and you will run into guys who are good B throwers who simply don't possess the tools in their toolbox to move higher. And that is what it is, man. It's just, but they enjoy doing it, and they want to be the best they can at it. And if that caps them at a 11-foot wob and a 20-foot heavyweight, but they're doing it well, hang around that group. If that's as far as you go, if the good Lord blessed you with being 5'6" and 210 pounds, and that's just, you're not willing to risk diabetes like Matt is, you know, it's totally fine to just go be the best B class thrower you can be.
And as a B, we've talked about in a previous episode the differences between like the ranges of B, but there are going to be guys that are stronger than you, and there are going to be guys that are more technically proficient, and you want to talk to both of them. But talk to the guy that's stronger than you. It doesn't matter if he's throwing further or less. Talk to the guy that's stronger than you about strength training. Talk to the guy that has prettier technique, not that's throwing further necessarily. The guy that looks like he knows what he's doing for technique, and pick his mind on technique. And
if
put
the
them
guy
together.
you're taking advice from is wearing a leather kilt, high folded socks, and a tunic shirt, stop listening to him. This,
when his girlfriend comes over in elf ears, walk away.
Maybe. But in general, for the love of please be responsible about who you're taking advice from. Vet my advice. Vet Matt's. If you don't like something we're saying and you can come up with a great reason to not listen to us, I am totally fine with it. I've been wrong before. Genuinely, there are people you should listen to and people you shouldn't, and you should be responsible enough if you want to get better. If you don't want to get better, do whatever you want to do. But if you want to get better at this quote-unquote sport, get your information from people who are better than you. Or in some regard, Matt and I have both been coached by a guy that we outthrow, but he is a very good coach.
Yeah.
Like, I will listen to Jerry talk all day long because he's been around this enough and he is technically proficient that I'm going to listen to him about technique. That is 100% what I'm going to do. And if I have a question about strength training, I'm going to come talk to Matt because Matt is stronger than me. And I'm going to draw on those knowledge bases that are better than mine and try and make myself a better athlete.
Absolutely. I think if you are looking for coaching or trying to get better at this, finding a team is imperative.
They are around. Be on Facebook. I'm sorry, but that's where you have to go.
Be on Facebook. Yeah, not finding a team and just saying, oh, there aren't resources. That's not true. You just have to look a little.
Yeah, they're hard to find.
If you need technical coaching or cueing, you can reach out to me at Big McDougal on Instagram. That's BIGMACDOUGAL.
Spelled differently than his last name in all these episodes.
Correct, yeah, because it's Big Mac Dougal. Because I'm fat, it's a McDonald's reference. But, send me a DM, shoot me a video. I can fix your shit, right? Or I can at least try.
If you try to send me a video, I'll tell you what you're doing wrong, and I am not smart enough to fix it.
Do not send me a hammer video. Send those to Greg Martz at Badger Supply.
Yeah. Or find a group on Facebook, genuinely,
right,
and pose a question. You will find someone halfway close to you within an hour's drive that you can throw with once a week.
I don't know any pro that if you sent them a video and said, hey, I need a technical cue and I will Venmo you $10, that would not fix your stuff, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. I think that's a good place to wrap up. We did it on a high note. Here's how to actually reach out to people and get better and learn. I like it.
Yeah.
Till next time.